Zombie Apocalypse.
You know, I've often wondered what actually happens when we die. I mean, it's crazy to think that there's something else, isn't there? And the biggest reason for that is... Okay. Can you imagine your mind being a totally different person? Being a totally different person? Is it scary to think that your mind or your soul could end up transplanted in a new body? With a new name, a new life, but it's still you. Even more so. Continuing in a new life like this, and still being you, but losing all of your memories, your experiences in that way. I guess it may not be a big deal for some, because if you have nothing, no point, no references, nothing. Really, what does it matter? Nobody knows for sure, because past life recollections are almost always accurate. Well, as accurate as a memory that you or I or a living person would have. Or anything living for that matter. I've had them, and you probably have too, odd knowledges, impulses about things that you, in this body and life, never experienced. In short, souls are a pretty unique thing. I'm going to tell you a story about Ohio, so you can understand how it is that I know what I know. I'm not proud of it, but my dad's side of the family is extremely religious. My Uncle Jim was the most accomplished on that side of the family. He has several theology master degrees, and for a few years worked for the Vatican as a consul or advisor to the Pope. My grandfather Idriss apparently had the most interesting time, though. My mom didn't tell me this story till I was around 18, and my dad hasn't even spoken of it. Apparently, great-grandpa Idriss presided over a local church in the 1920s. When he came to America from Wales in 1924, he was contacted to do the unthinkable. A young couple in Bretonneux, a very wealthy suburb about 2 hours north, had contacted a church and been approved for an exorcism. But their only trained exorcist in northern Ohio was away in the French Riviera for 2 weeks, and this couldn't wait. So they called the next person who was known for being familiar with such, my great-grandfather. I've never been told how he learned to do whatever it was that he did, but on fairly chilly September day in the 1924, he himself, his friends, Father Joseph Segal, and several other of the church's more loyal volunteers took a train to Cleveland from southeast Ohio and eventually made it to the young couple's home. The possession was a fairly straightforward. I guess the family, only in their late 20s, had a young daughter who had met a kindly old fortune teller at a carnival. The fortune teller apparently took the young girl's hand and began gripping it tighter and tighter until both of them screaming. Then the teller told her to beware of curse. This frightened the young girl. And days later, the possession began. I won't go into too much of the possession. It's irrelevant here, but the exorcism apparently went well. The gentleman, including the man of the house, celebrated with a night of card playing. Though no gambling, of course, the details get fuzzy. But it's said that Papa Idris, as we called him, suddenly began having a sort of seizure, which he'd never had before, and initially everyone rushed him to the hospital believing he'd had a stroke. Even hospitals were relatively primitive at this point, but Idris had regained all of his motor functions instantly, which ruled out a stroke, well, to the doctor. He wasn't given any medicine, but was asked to stay in the hospital overnight, Father Segal stayed by his side for the evening. Idris hadn't said a word since he entered the hospital, despite being awake the entire time. Around 1 in the morning, Papa Idris finally spoke to Father Segal. He asked him to get him, some paper and a pen, which he did. And he told him something along the lines of, "Joe, something that changed my life." He then began dictating his experience to Father Segal, who wrote it down. Now, before you get excited, the original writings were lost, but they made their way through my family before being lost in the late 70s. Papa Idris left the church after this experience, and only Father Segal believed and knows completely why. But the main point is that Idris had seen disproved much of what he believed in, religion-wise namely. But what happens when we die? It took my mom 18 years to tell me, but I'm glad she waited, because I wouldn't have understood. The biggest point was that Papa Idris had some sort of vision, an epiphany. He believed that it wasn't induced by the demon, but believed at first that this was knowledge, was sort of a reward from God for doing his work, until he realized that his vision contradicted the Bible. And I believe the story, because I'm not sure if a mortal could conceive what I'm about to tell you. There are no heavens or hells to speak of. There is no good and bad, but they are entirely random in occurrence. Being good won't get you a better afterlife, and being bad won't make you have a worse afterlife. The most bizarre part of it is the same number of souls have existed for as long as time has. Souls are around before the human body, and through some magic of the cosmos, souls happen to be the perfect fuel to drive the human archive more than other mammals. That isn't to say that mammals or animals other than humans don't have souls. The soul of a goldfish just has the capability of greatness as one of ours. They just don't have the vessel to accomplish it. This is also why most animals have much shorter lifespans than humans. Lifespan is cosmically proportionate to the portion of the vessel holding a soul. Humans have the biggest capacity for greatness and creation because we've spent centuries learning to teach things to humans and teaching humans how to discover new things for themselves. Regardless, nobody knows the exact number of souls that exist, nor do we know if it's possible to run out. It won't matter if we do, though. Life after death does exist in a way. A soul is like matter. It can't be created or destroyed, only changed. And that is exactly what happens when a human body dies. The soul does indeed move towards the light if they're lucky. The light today, at least, is often the light of a hospital delivery room where their soul has been replaced into a fresh new body. This process doesn't erase memories of one's past life, but it represses them. Because it is assumed that this new body will need to learn different things than the past one. Now what about the souls that aren't immediately reincarnated? Well, that's a blank spot. In this story, because I've never heard anything much about it other than souls wait. Kind of like an office room. You're just waiting to be seen. But in this case, they just wait until it's their turn. Basically, we know these waiting souls are as ghosts. Expanding on that, the amount of ghosts in the world are as proportionate to the world's current population. There are maths that one can do to figure out to a few percent-ish. But I don't know why you'd want to. The waiting souls or ghosts lessen in numbers as they are taken back to Earth reincarnated. There's no rhyme or reason to who gets chosen for what. As I said before, I don't want to get too graphic, but the secret to reducing the population, if wandering souls, if you will, is reproduction. Human is best, obviously. But any animal is fair game. Past lives are common here as well. Obviously, there's no way to definitively prove the garden snake has a memory of being a doctor, but based on the system, it's certainly possible, if not guaranteed. So there. Now you know, Papa Idris went on to retire after the exorcism in Bretagne, but always remained in good health and sound mind until, well, the day he passed away. He wasn't crazy, and it took a while for me to realize the impeccable detail in some of the stories he told my dad as a kid, which were passed to me. But now, I understand Papa Idris had been around for a very long time.
I'm waking up to ash and dust. I wipe my brow and I sweat my rust. I'm breathing in the chemicals.